Good morning, everyone, and look, welcome back to Solid Ground. And I say welcome back. I say welcome back as I just adjust my volume here. I say welcome back because, of course, I wasn't on last week. Last week could be a blessing to the country and my family. I actually lost my voice. These respiratory issues, viruses, whatever they are going around, got the better of me. And so, yes, amongst other things, I had lost my voice. At the best of times, I sounded like Barry White. And at the best of times, I sound like a mute. So, and I must admit, I still have a slight lingering cough. So if every so often you see me stop like this, you'll know why. But look, lovely to have you on board. You'll be watching this across many platforms. But a reminder, particularly to those who are new, if you want to leave comments for me to see during the course of this next half an hour, jump onto the Family First Facebook page. There, whatever comments you put in actually come into the studio here, and I'm able to say hello and respond to them. So as always, to those who are tuning in at the moment, let me know where you are in and around the country and around the world. It's one of my, lovely little things I'm discovering through this Facebook Live platform, or rather this live platform, is actually we have viewers and listeners all around the world. So yeah, just say hello. Would love you to, as I say, know where you are in the country. But also, as we talk through this morning, actually some pretty tough, heavy issues, to be honest. If you've got questions or thoughts, send them through. And I'll do my best actually to put them up on the screen so we can all see what you are saying. Because look, we're going to deal with some big issues today, particularly in the life space. I mean, you guys know I'm big into the pro-life space, but we've actually had a whole number of issues arise this it's been 2 weeks, of course, since I was last on. So we have issues we need to deal with in the gender identity space, if you've been following what's happening in Australia. But there's a particular event happening in New Zealand where we need you to submit put in a submission to protect biology. We've got developments in the euthanasia space. And as you also know, there's a review on here in New Zealand as the likes of the ACT Party and others are pushing hard to expand the legislation to encompass even more vulnerable New Zealanders. And then in the life space, in terms of abortion, there's been changes there as well, but actually a mixture of stories. So look, lots to discuss. As I say, welcome to Solid Ground. It's about discussing the topics of the day from a good foundation, but also enjoying a good cup of coffee. But you'll notice I'm not showing you mine because I've already quaffed mine back. I was that thirsty. I've already nailed, finished, completed. It's all done. So first and foremost, good morning to everyone who is kindly sending messages. So lovely to have you there, Chris. Good morning to Ian. Thank you. Lovely to have you back as well. I'm pleased to have my voice back. To my good friend Rosie. Rosie is one of our constant followers. It's lovely to have her on. And Michael, lovely. Hi, hello, welcome. And as I say to people, if you want to leave your comments, I'll go onto all the platforms. So we're on LinkedIn, we're on my personal Facebook page, we're on YouTube. But if you want to send me a comment like Michael and Rosie, Chris and others have done so, so please, long and short, send your messages through. Just like Jay has just done here, asking a question, is asking, when will the digital ID become compulsory? Good question. I don't know. I'm not sure it will become compulsory. It all depends on what the Parliament or the government of the day decides. And I have to be honest with you, Jay, I'm not as up to speed as in I know the general intent. I know the general intent around digital ID. I don't know exactly what the law says. So that's going to be the fundamental point. So we've got to keep an eye out for any law or proposed law. And then that's the chance to submit. I mean, long and short, we use a lot of digital technology already, but if that CrowdStrike breakdown of about a month ago showed us anything, it's that we can't be completely dependent on it. And finally, before I jump onto a nice story to start, but to say good morning to Kevin and to Nicholas as well, Morena, que te pere quay, as in, how are you doing? I mean, Nicholas probably knows that, but for some others. But lovely to have you all on board, guys. Look, I thought I'd just start with what I thought was just a lovely picture. This was, again, from about 2 weeks ago, but I wanted to share it because often in this space, you'll have me critiquing I was going to say criticising, that's probably true as well, critiquing and criticising a lot of what's happening. So as you can imagine, a lot of the work at Family First is, promoting the good of family, but at times we're also challenging some of the absurd decisions. So I like to try and bookmark things, if you will, that have some positivity. And so this was a photo of a mum and her young baby that she gave birth to her little wee one there. And I'm sorry I don't have their names in front of me, in the back of a police car. And so this was a couple of days later when the new mum and her little beautiful newborn, you can see there, reunited with the two police officers who helped give birth, as I say, in the back of police car. So, I mean, probably not the best thing at the time, but a wonderful story for that newborn. So I just thought that was a lovely story, and I have a couple of other lovely stories too. But I wanted to jump into what are some pretty heavy issues. And I don't say that because I'm one of these people who's trying to give you a trigger warning. That's what the progressives do. But, we're here on solid ground to talk about the issues that actually matter. And one of them's this. So as I said earlier, there's a push by the likes of the ACT Party, and certainly been amplified by many in media, not all, who are wanting to expand euthanasia. And so there's this consultation on at the moment. And so I encourage you to send your thoughts in. You can jump onto the Ministry of Health website or Google search, or of course you can, if you haven't signed up to the Family First mail subscription, please do so, because we can always, well, as we do, we send you the links to things like this. And so they're trying to expand euthanasia. At the moment, it's not that narrow, but they're trying to say, look, instead of 6 months to live, it should be at least 12. It shouldn't just be grievous medical conditions. It has to be or include irreversible. In other words, they just really wanted to expand things. And as you know, I'm completely opposed. Euthanasia puts the most vulnerable at risk. And it's one of the reasons, people, that you'll notice there's very little reporting actually around euthanasia. It's very, very high level. We know about 650 or so New Zealanders have died via euthanasia by, I think, November last year, so it'll be higher now, of course. But we're seeing the same trajectory as Canada, as in more and more people accessing it. And so stay tuned, because over the coming weeks, I've actually got some more excellent interviews for my Family Matters podcast. We're actually going to talk to some people from Canada to get their experience. But I just thought I'd illustrate to you where the problems can start. So this is from a couple of weeks ago, coming out of the BBC. This was an article where basically the mum there smiling killed her son and called it euthanasia. So let's not gild the lily. Let's not talk euphemistically. That woman there smiling killed her son. But when you read the article, I'm not actually trying to pick on the BBC in this particular instance. But the way it's reported is this was a loving, caring thing. Because the child had disabilities and issues. And let's be clear, the child did have some serious issues. But there's a near, celebration in some circles that she did the right and moral thing. And that should send a chill down anybody's spine. Because I don't know about you, I can look in the mirror and I can look at just about anyone in my life and people that I know and say that there are issues with them. But you know what? I don't jump to the conclusion that therefore they should be eliminated. And that, unfortunately, is what's happening in stories like this. A person, in this case, the mother, who's meant to actually care and love for her child, has decided that the child's life was not worth living. And so terminated and killed her child. Absolute shocker. Now, this is something that came out later in life. You can see by the sepia tones of that photo, it's quite old. But it was just the way... Excuse me. You'll just notice the way, if you do look it up, if you search the headline, you'll find more details. But it's just the way these things are reported, that death in some circumstances is seen as terrible, understandably. But then in others, it's okay. And the sad thing is with the euthanasia space is once you open the door, as it has in New Zealand, to say some deaths, some suicides are acceptable, then it becomes very difficult, if not nigh impossible, of where else to stop it. So as I say, there'll be people looking at this case going, oh no, I think it's perfectly acceptable for a mother to kill her son who's got, In this case, terminal illnesses, and is very unwell. Personally, I think it's sick. She shouldn't be celebrated. In fact, she should be thrown into prison. That's to be blunt there. And then you end up with these philosophical conundrums, because this was in the paper. Again, I read the BBC a lot. I find it useful, biased as they come. They're sliding. The BBC sliding big time, but I still find it useful to get information I can't get in New Zealand. But they put this one up. And why I thought I'd share this, and again, I know it's heavy for a Tuesday morning, and if you're here in Auckland, you know it's bucketing with rain, grey and miserable. But this was the article that actually there's hundreds of people in the UK who go to a website. They want to kill themselves, so they want to suicide, but they want a partner. And this website, sort of a suicide dating, links people together. Now, the article mentions that there are some of the hundreds, some, very small number it seems to imply, that people are being coerced or they're very, very vulnerable. But, and why I'm sharing this, is actually, if you are a supporter of euthanasia, if you are the likes of David Seymour or others in the Parliament who think it's perfectly fine for people to make their own choices about life, then what is wrong with this? What's wrong with this? Now, let's be really clear. I think it's terrible. I think it's beyond terrible. I think it's wrong. I think these things should be stopped. I have a consistent ethic of life, as does Family First. We oppose the likes of euthanasia in all its form. But if you're a pro-euthanasia advocate, if you are sitting there, the type of person who tries to write to me and says, oh, well, Simon, it's all about my choice, it's my bodily autonomy, I can choose when to go, I should be allowed to, I'm compos mentis, I'm rational, then you've got to try and tell me what's wrong with this. And now maybe you don't see there's something wrong, and actually from a philosophical consistency point of view, kudos to you. But most people would be going, oh no, I don't agree with this, that just seems wrong. Well, you can't say that, actually. Or rather, you can't say this, what I'm showing at the moment, these suicide clubs are wrong and euthanasia is correct, because it's all the same dynamic, people, if you get what I'm saying. See, at the end of the day, if you accept the idea that people can make a choice to die, then who are you to put a whole lot of conditions around it? Once you open the door to the concept of euthanasia, and as I discussed with Professor Theo Bohr, he's probably one of the foremost experts in euthanasia in the world, and certainly in the Netherlands, once you say that it's perfectly okay, that it really is just down to an issue of justice, that is, you decide what is right for you, then how do you say that things like this are wrong? And that was the implied narrative of the BBC, by the way, that this is wrong, this is terrible, that people who are otherwise well are choosing to find a partner to kill themselves with. As I say, if you're for euthanasia, how do you argue against that? Because most of those people are rational, calm, making their decision, it's their life, it's their choice. What's the problem? Now, again, I do see the problem. If you've got someone who wants to end their life prematurely, they need care, they need compassion, they don't need killing. So it's a heavy topic, probably freaking some people out, but actually you've got to think about these things, and I would suggest to you as well, you've got to call out the inconsistencies. So the next time that someone says to you that euthanasia is perfectly fine, say to them, okay, are you happy with these suicide clubs where, otherwise healthy, rational people just decide to end their lives? Are they comfortable with that? As I say, some people will be. It's philosophically consistent, just a bit sick, really, isn't it? But that's potentially the problem in society. So get on to this document. Tell the New Zealand government and the Ministry of Health what you think about the euthanasia law in New Zealand. Note that there's basically no oversight. Note that they don't do full reporting. Note that they can't even fill the vacancies for those who are meant to do the oversights. So no shortage of issues, guys. No shortage of issues. I'm just going to put this back up because it's still a lovely photo. I'm going to jump topics into, well, which one should we jump into? I tell you what we're going to do is going to quickly jump to this little puppy. So you might have seen recently that there is a new, and I'll get to some questions in a moment, we have two new human rights commissioners appointed. One's called Dr. Stephen Rainbow, so he is the new human rights commissioner, replacing a guy called Paul Hunt. and the other is a Dr. Melissa Darby. She's going to be the Race Relations Commissioner. For a lot on the left, though, the progressives and most of the media who tried to run hatchet jobs on them, they are not woke enough for them. For those on the progressive left in particular, the Human Rights Commission is their little plaything. And so if you follow anything to do with the Human Rights Commission, which, by the way, we should close down because it's an utter waste of time, the left, the progressives, the woke think it's their plaything, as I say, to push their little agendas on gender, on treaty issues, you name it. And when you think of the commissioners that we've had to date and the managerial staff, they are absolutely, totally woke. They wouldn't know, as I keep saying, a human right if it hit them over the head. But the new government, and kudos to them, have actually appointed people like Stephen Rainbow, who, amongst other things, I do know, and actually have immense respect for. Stephen and I would disagree on a number of issues, but we agree on a whole lot of others, including the fact that there is something called free speech. And Stephen's very big into that actually we're going to create a more cohesive, coherent society by having more dialogue. But the media, I'm not even going to call him a journalist. I don't even know who Cherie Howie is. I've seen some of their articles. They're absolutely terrible. Was upset. It was just beyond the pale, according to the New Zealand Herald, that the new Human Rights Commissioner might have a more nuanced view on transgender rights. Now, Stephen is gay. He's part of that wider LGBTI community, but I suspect, without putting words in his mouth, he doesn't believe that it's all necessarily one big happy community. There's actually nuances, and he, particularly on the trans issue, is saying, well, look, there's things we need to discuss here. Nope, not according to the New Zealand Herald or Radio New Zealand or all the other woke media. He was to be silenced. And worse still, as you can see in the headline, he has a pro-Israeli leaning. He doesn't, support Hamas. Gosh, shock horror. But that was beyond the pale. So again, for the likes of this reporter, and take good note of their name, because, you'll come across this person. It might be useful to bear this in mind. They don't accept that someone can have alternative views on the Israel-Gaza question. They don't accept you might have a different view on the Treaty of Waitangi. They don't accept that there's two sexes in life. And so just like this reporter's trying to do, they're trying to dox or harass the likes of Dr. Rainbow and Dr. Darby out of their appointment. Because as I said right at the start, these people, the likes of Cherie Howie and others, are desperate to make sure only their views are heard. So pretty appalling, but I think some very positive appointments, despite, as I say, mainstream media attacking them endlessly, and attacking them because simply they believe ultimately in free speech. They believe that actually issues like this, be it Israel, Gaza, which of course has got nothing really to do with New Zealand, by the way, which is quite strange. I mean, the amount of airtime that our mainstream media gives to this in a New Zealand context is ridiculous. But anyway, that's a side note. They just don't accept, this is the likes of the Herald, Newsroom, Stuff, RNZ, that someone might have a position other than theirs. And I really want to stress this, and it's one of the reasons that Family First is running talks like this on Solid Ground. We have straight talk on a Monday night. We have political playback on a Thursday. Bob's doing his McBlogs, is we're trying to give you, if you will, some alternatives where actually you can think for yourself, because there'll be a number of you here going, well, I don't fully agree with you, Simon. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Let me know why. Send in a message, flick me a note, send me an email. I don't mind discussion and dialogue. That's how things go forward. This is that sort of, authoritarian, dominating narrative that the likes of the Herald are well known for. You will conform to their view, which is why a lot of us don't even get published. That's a whole side issue, because I write in Foreign Affairs. It's interesting, they'll publish Helen Clark ad nauseum, but there are some of us, myself included, who try to write different views, just don't get published. So be really aware of how New Zealand media in the mainstream tries to distort narratives. Anyway, I've prattled on quite a bit there, so I'm just going to put up a couple of comments as he coughs. Rosie says more people with disability. Well, they will be. I mean, look, let's be really, really clear in the euthanasia space. When you say, and I've had this out with, it's often, a stereotype of people say, well, I would hate to be in a wheelchair. I would hate to have someone have to wipe my bottom. I'd hate to have someone have to feed me. I'd rather be dead. Very, very common thought process of those who want to kill themselves. They are making a quite explicit statement to our disabled community who live with that every day and don't think their life lacks any dignity. And so this is why, particularly those who argue in the euthanasia space that their decisions have no impact on anyone else's, it's just theirs. They're blatantly and patently wrong because actually everyone's decisions is making statements about the value of life and others. So very sad. I'm just going to click this one. How can I read it here on screen? I think a bit of there's a dark humour there around raising kids. As I've heard that, so to speak, joke before. Actually, Nicholas has nailed it here. So I actually can't see I can see people have commented. I can't see what they are until I put them on my screen. But yeah, look, tolerance is a Trojan horse. I mean, it's all this DEI stuff, to be honest, is very much. Excuse me a second. Have you noticed it's never tolerant of the alternative views? It's only tolerant of one view, which is why, this element here is so important. As you say, the Herald, Radio New Zealand, Newsroom, and all the others who are decrying these two new commissioners, they're the very ones who would be normally talking about. They would normally be talking about tolerance, diversity, and inclusion, but just not these people, not these views. You can only think one way. Hey, look, in other news, let's switch to the other side of life. I don't know if you've been following in Australia, harrowing testimony from this midwife in the Queensland Parliament. Long and short, she went to the Queensland Parliament and shared as an experienced midwife her experience of babies born alive through botched abortions, usually chemical abortions, just in case someone's going to ask me that. So babies are earlier in life, but they're born and they're just left to die. And so she was there pitching to the Queensland Parliament that actually care should be given. Because just remember, of course, the pro-abortion advocates are always a big thing that until it's actually born, it's not a child, it's just a blob of cells. And once it's born, then it's different. It's now a baby. It's the magic, as people say, of the birth canal. The inconvenient truth now is that actually babies are being born alive and then just left to die. So they're out of the birth canal, they're out of mum's tummy, they're there. They look human, they are human, but they're being left to die. And so it was an absolutely harrowing testimony from this very brave woman. And then a couple of days later, the federal parliament, the Senate, actually voted against an amendment or a law to protect born children through a botched abortion, that actually instead of just leaving them sitting on the floor to die, that medical care must be given to them. And tragically, sadly, scandalously, the Australian Senate in this case said, no, we can just let them die. And you see, guys, I talk about this as a culture of death. And I'm sorry it's a heavy topic for a Tuesday morning, but just look around you of what we've even just touched on briefly. Euthanasia, euthanizing sick children, suicide clubs, abortion in and of itself. And now we've got cases where children are born alive and are just left on the floor to die. That is a culture of death. And if you think this doesn't happen in New Zealand, you are sadly mistaken. You'll find it difficult to read, but this is an Official Information Act request from just one of our DHBs that talks about it and its protocols. So we know in New Zealand that babies are also born alive here in New Zealand. Again, usually because of chemical abortions that fail, they're just left to die. And I'm pretty het up about this topic because some of you will know I was the MP who put an amendment into Parliament on that terrible abortion law that we have to say that actually, again, if a baby's born, then medical treatment must be given to them. Sadly, most of my colleagues from across the House voted it down, which is completely sick. But that's the nature of some of the people you have in Parliament, really. And so when, you sit back at times and wonder why stupid decisions are made in other areas, you've got MPs who wouldn't know what life is and are more than happy for babies to die. And that's pretty blunt, but it's pretty tragic. And the only other thing I'd note in that space is, and thanks to Sue who sent this through to me with the commentary, this is The Australian, so one of the big Australian newspapers is actually covering the story. And bless Australia for all its faults. They're actually talking about this. They're discussing it. So why do I share that with you? It's because New Zealand media wouldn't touch this with the barge pole. Not only the Australian context, and to be fair, it's happening in Australia, but do the thought experiment, guys. Do you think New Zealand media would debate this topic? The short answer is no, because a bit like their attack on the new human rights commissioners, New Zealand's media have made their decisions, and they think abortion's fine. In order to protect the concept, it's got to get more and more extreme, which is why you now have abortion up to birth. In fact, you have it post-birth. As I say, children are left to die, which is just absolutely tragic. I'm just going to call out some, I'm going to hope I can. Here it is. So Rosie, this is just jumping back on some of the life issues. This is a woman in a wheelchair, and this is the whole point. The pro-euthanasia lobby would say to Rosie's friend, well, no one's asking you to die. You can make your choice, and that's true. But, the person who does suicide because they're in a wheelchair is actually making a very explicit statement to Rosie's friend. Charmaine's right. I mean, if you are this person or persons who think it's okay to leave babies to die, there is something quite sick. It's just shocking. Emily's asking, and I don't know. Well, sorry, I see what you mean. Yeah, no, I understand the statement now. Yes, so abortion is increasing in New Zealand, as far as we know. Part of the problem now is that they're handing out pills like there's nobody's business, and so that gets a lot harder to work out what's happening. But again, that's all just sort of part of it. It's like I was touching on very earlier around the euthanasia stuff. There's a great desire in governmental circles to hide the data, and so you don't get as a fuller picture. And I always remember, guys, when I was in a select committee debating Ministry of Health officials about sex-selective abortions. That is where it happens in particular cultures that, a boy is seen as more valuable than a girl. So if the scan tells you that the child's a girl, it's aborted. And they were saying, well, we've got no evidence of that. And what they meant is they don't collect the data. So is it happening? Most likely it is. It certainly is around the world. Why it would not be happening here doesn't make any sense to me. Of course it is. But they don't collect the data. And because of that, they say, well, it's not happening. So just always be aware, if you will, of those little tricks. So I'll end with something that's quite positive, because there'll be some people, particularly in the abortion space, saying, if they're chemical abortions, are taking these pills, the baby's not viable. Well, if that was the case, you wouldn't have to leave them on the floor to die. But here's another, which is, believe it or not, is a nice story. It's a nice story. This is in New Zealand. And so let's, not take away from the story in and of itself, but this is a baby it was born at 23 weeks. And what a little precious gift that is. 23 weeks. And alive, kicking, very much human, undoubtedly human. So actually, kudos to the Herald that they reported this. Of course, the Herald's editors and that don't really have the wherefore to understand that while they promote abortion on one side, here is, a testimony of what they are aborting. But I just thought it was a wonderful, beautiful little story. And if you want to flick to overseas too, and this has upset the pro-death lobby, that in Arizona, where they're having a vote, they're calling them unborn humans, which I just think is lovely too, because that's what they are. And, you've heard me talk about this before, guys, but the progressives are always very quick to use euphemisms. Always quick to use euphemisms for what is, like this, a beautiful, beautiful little child. And so, yeah, isn't that cute? Absolutely beautiful. So best wishes to mum and baby there. Hey, look, last few points, guys. As you know, New Zealand first. Family first. So I've actually just been doing an interview late yesterday with some New Zealand First MPs for my radio show. So they're on my brain. So family first. Family first does an array of media these days to try and bring you various perspectives and thoughts on issues. So we all know Bob, of course, he's very busy doing his McBlogs. He's also now actually on Substack. So if you're not on Substack, you need to be, because both Bob and I are there. We write. So Bob does his McBlogs every day. Well, most days. So check those out. Monday nights we do Straight Talk. So that's a panel discussion, again, live. So join in there. My colleague Tumby does Pulse Point every week. She normally takes about 5 stories that you basically don't hear of in mainstream media and draws them to your attention, which is brilliant. Every week, usually, I do a podcast, something called Family Matters. This one's from a couple of weeks ago. This is when I sat down with Sam Garraway from Christians Against Poverty. But in recent weeks, I've had Dr. John Kleinsman. We've been talking about the ethics of euthanasia. I've had someone called Kate from the Dignity Freedom Network. They work with the complete underclass of India. And so we talk about her work with the Dignity Freedom Network. So that's all pretty neat. And then we've got this on a Thursday night, Political Playback, is where Bob and I chat live from 5 p.m. A bit like Solid Ground, actually, but we chat live. And we discuss the political topics of the week. And so it's quite another big week. I see, actually, as I woke up this morning, Chris Hipkins has decided that the Māori never ceded sovereignty, which is a fascinating decision that he's come to. This is from a man who doesn't even know what a woman is, so I'm not really sure I spend much time pondering. But Political Playback, we will touch on that topic and more. So come and join. Just like Solid Ground, you can put in questions. Sorry guys, slightly coughing here, so excuse me muting every so often. But Political Playback, we're there for about 45 minutes, taking your questions, discussing things of the day, the political events of the day and the week. If you can't get enough of me, I do a 2-hour radio show every Friday morning from 10 a.m. till midday called Speak Free. I've actually got some pretty, I think, amazing guests lined up this week. And I mentioned Substack, so this is where we write again. This is a bit of an old screenshot, but every week I write on, I call it On Point. It's a bit of a double entendre, but come and read what I have to say, and Bob's as well, so look us up. So no shortage, guys, of media, no shortage of ways to engage with topics of the day. First and foremost, often topics that the media will not talk about, they will deliberately ignore. But also we provide, if you will, a good, well, it is strictly conservative, but a good, morally grounded view of things. So my thanks to all of you for joining me this morning. It is nice to be back. Nice to have you all on here. To all of you who have been commenting across the various platforms over the coming hours, I will get to look at those. To those who have been on the Family First Facebook page commenting, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you all here. Nicholas nails it. It always creeps. This is the whole point. And, proponents know this. They just, once you've opened the door, then it just keeps being pushed open. So I'm just clicking on some of the last little comments here. So Pamela's right. It just helps. This is around the abortion numbers. Anyway, guys, you have a lovely afternoon. Morning. It's still the morning, so I've been up for hours. You have a lovely day. Thank you for joining me on Solid Ground. As I say, Bob and I will be online from 5 p.m. Thursday to do the Political Playback of the week. We'll see you then. In the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your day.